Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 147 of the BoxHard Podcast. If this were a weight class, it'd be welterweight, of course. I am your host, Joey Coastman. I'm also joined, as ever, by Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joey. Yourself?
Very good, my friend, very good. Let's start with the reviewing. There's a lot to go over. We're going to start actually in the Technology Park in Redfern, New South Wales, Australia. This one was shown on Box Nation. I believe it started about 10:30 a.m. last Friday. It was also shown on the ESPN Plus app in the United States. One fight to mention on the undercard, the son of Kostya, Tim Tszyu. He moved to 10-0, double-figure wins now. A win against Stevie Ferdinandus, who's now 27-16 with one draw. It was for the WBC Asian Boxing Council Continental Super Welterweight title. That still belongs to Tim Tszyu. Also, the main event here, of course, we had Billy Dib, 43-4, the former IBF world champion, taking on Tevin Farmer, 25-4 with one draw. Tevin Farmer, of course, a man that I said last week, you know, he certainly deserves to be a world champion. Very, very unfortunate circumstances he's had to go through. And this one was for the vacant IBF world super featherweight title. Now, the fight itself, I felt that Farmer started brilliantly straight away. You know, he made Dib walk into his shots pretty much from the first bell. Tevin, you know, he didn't need any time to warm into the fight. It was a brilliant start to the fight from him. He had a great first round. In the second round, Dib was actually given a warning for a little bit of a naughty punch, actually, after the referee called break. It was quite silly from Billy, actually. Very scrappy second round. Lots of tying up, but you know, more punch output from Farmer at that point, so I gave him that round also. In the third round, Tevin landed the much cleaner shots there, and Billy was starting to look frustrated as early as that third round, and his face was starting to mark up a little bit. In the fourth round, Tevin just looked to be the much fresher of the two. You know, he had the spring in his step, and after 4 rounds, it was Tevin who, like I say, was getting off first when the pair were exchanging. He was using his fantastic footwork. Billy Dib was looking a little bit pedestrian. He seemed like, you know, his tactics weren't really working. His plan was to try and walk through Farmer's shots, it would seem, to try and land big ones himself. It just completely wasn't working for him. In the fifth round, it was probably the most competitive round at that point. Tevin was stepping in and out with the jab, though, hitting Billy a lot. It was another round for Tevin in my book, but the pace actually slowed a little bit from Tevin. Billy was able to land quite a few neat, you know, nice little shots himself, but still, like I say, a Tevin Farmer round. It was another round for Tevin in the sixth round. Lots of pot shotting from Farmer. Like I say, Billy was getting very frustrated. He was walking in recklessly. You know, he wasn't showing a great defense at all, and there was no head movement with it either. He was walking into a lot of shots, and even if they didn't have much power, some of these shots, they were all still scoring shots. At that halfway point, I had it a shutout to Tevin Farmer. In the seventh round, Tevin got caught with a nice short left hook from Billy Dib, which actually seemed to momentarily stun Farmer, but the referee immediately stopped the action to issue a warning. It was very bad timing for Billy Dib. I mean, you know, he came out with intent in that seventh round for some reason, and he started the round very fiery, and he seemed like he was really starting to just go for broke now. Both men went on to land big looking left hooks later in that seventh round. It was a competitive round, but in the last 45 seconds or so, I felt that Tevin showed his class, and I believe he stole that round actually. In the eighth round, it was a good round. You know, Tevin obviously being the much sexier boxer, the eye-catching stuff came from him. His movement, his quick hands, they were very impressive. Billy did land some good shots once again. It was a close round, to be honest, but I'd probably still edge it to Tevin because, you know, his evasiveness was so brilliant in that round, and Billy missed a lot of big shots. The referee, at every opportunity, it was kind of winding me up. He kept kept giving Billy Dib a telling off. It was just winding me up. He just kept being on Billy's case. In the 9th round, it was a fairly competitive round until Billy took a hard left hook from Farmer, which made Billy's legs give way, and he went down. A 10-8 round for Farmer. At this point, Billy Dib's coach, Jeff Fennick, actually was ready to throw the towel in at that point. Billy did get back up from the knockdown, and he did survive the remaining 15 or so seconds, but the towel was in Jeff Fennick's hand. Now, in the 10th round, Tevin Farmer started very fast, and Dib reacted by trying to clown Farmer. He was pulling faces, he was sticking his tongue out, and he actually seemed to draw Tevin into a little bit of a fight, but Tevin still got the better of the exchanges, and he grabbed that round. He just, at that point seemed like he had more in the tank than Billy. He'd handed out a lot of punishment, and Billy didn't have too much energy left at that point. Then, after that 10th round, all of a sudden, the Box Nation feed went down, and it only resumed when the 11 and 12 rounds had actually ended. So it ended, the whole broadcast kind of thing, at the end of the 10th round. And then, as soon as the fight had finished, I'm not quite sure what happened in rounds 11 and 12, like I say, but all I did know was that without Billy Dib scoring any kind of knockout, I think it wasn't even a case of a few knockdowns, he needed a knockout to win that fight. I had it to Tevin Farmer by complete shutout from rounds 1 to 10. Rounds 11 and 12 I didn't see. Like I say, bad from Box Nation there. It ended up picking up when they were in the ring after the fight, and I saw the post-fight interview from Tevin Farmer, very fiery. He's looking at people like Gervonta Davis. That's a fantastic fight down the line for him, perhaps not in the too distant future either. And Billy Dib, it was of course the polar opposite, really. He was so emotional. It was very, very hard to watch, being a good friend of his, and he decided to call it a day. It was very, very emotional, honestly. It's one of those things you watch and it's very hard to kind of keep the tears back. It was real emotional, and I just want to say I really wish Billy Dib the absolute best in whatever he does decide to do. I know that he's not going to be in the ring again, but whatever he does decide to do, I hope that it's something that he can succeed in. So yeah, he retires from boxing. A little piece of news there, a former world champion, of course, a man that was bullied at school and was scared to go to school, and then he completely, turned to boxing, became a good amateur, and then went on to turn professional and win a world title. And just there, he was able to fulfill a dream and fight for a world title on Australian soil. So credit to Billy Dib, a fantastic fighter he's been. And sad to see him leave, especially like that. But all the very best to Tevin Farmer. Like I say, a man that really deserved to be a world champion. And he came in Billy Dib's backyard and he put on an absolute display. He really did. It was a complete boxing lesson. And he just really, really impressed me. Fantastic fighter is Tevin Farmer. A bright future for him. That's it for Australia, though. Moving over now to a fight that actually happened at the Palacio de Congresos in Marbella, Spain. Kerman Leharaga, the former opponent of Bradley Skeet, the man that knocked Bradley Skeet out and looked absolutely fantastic, he got in the ring. It was like a keep busy kind of fight. Obviously he's fighting Frankie Gavin later on in the year. He took on a guy, it was supposed to be that guy that Ricky Burns knocked out with the best padded record in the whole of boxing history, Michele De Rocco, but he ended up taking on a guy called Johnny Navarrete at late notice. Navarrete actually got knocked out in 6 rounds by Kerman Leharaga, so he's still undefeated there. This guy, I'm just having a look at it, Navarrete, hasn't won a fight since 2016, and he's lost 4 on the spin now, including 1 knockout in 3 rounds to Jaime Munguia. Hey, how about that one for the books? Right, that's it for Spain. Moving over now to the Ice Arena in Cardiff, Wales, United Kingdom. Ayaz, obviously, Joe Cordina topped the bill here. A bit of a homecoming for him. Let's start with the undercard, actually. Let's start with the undercard. We're going to talk about Scotty Cardle, his first fight without Joe Gallagher in the corner. He moved to 23 wins, 2 losses and 1 draw. A points win against Michael Mooney. Gamal Yafai moved to 15 and 1. It was a TKO against Jose Aguilar, who that is actually his 51st loss now, Aguilar. It was a body shot, a left hook from Gamal Yafai. He returns after that loss to Gavin McDonnell. A brilliant way to come back there. Anthony Sims Jr., a guy who I believe fights somewhere around the light heavyweight kind of weight. He moved to 15-0. I think he's been out the ring for 2 years or something like that. He's just signed with Eddie Hearn. He's actually cousins with Floyd Mayweather Jr. He made his debut with Eddie Hearn, and he actually knocked out in 4 rounds Stanislav Echner, who now has a record of 10-10 with 1 draw. Cody Davies, he also fought back home. He moved to 6-0, a points win over 6 rounds against Anthony Fox. Cody Davies, a fighter under the Haymaker Ringstar Promotions banner. Daniyar Yulusinov moved to 3-0. It was a points win over 6 rounds against Gabor Gorbix, who's now 24-12. Yulusinov, it was weird because when the Sky broadcast started on TV, they went straight into the ring, and it was the end of the fight with Yulusinov, so I didn't see anything of it. But what I do know is that Yulusinov was cut once again. I mean, he's had this recurring cut in the same place, and it's quite a nasty looking one. He's had that kind of haunt him a few times in his amateur career. But yeah, he shut out this guy, but again, he didn't get the knockout. A lot of people starting to wonder if he's as good as they say. He's certainly seeming like it's pretty hard for him to adjust to the pro ranks. Obviously a former Olympic gold medalist in 2016. Jordan Gill moved to 21-0. It was a TKO in the first round against David Berner. David Berner, he was down twice there. His record now 16-5. David Berner's actually the guy that fought Michael Conlan earlier this year, and Michael Conlan actually needed 2 rounds to get rid of him. So Jordan Gill does it in 1, quite impressive. I think the last guy to beat this guy in a round was Oleg Malinovsky, a prospect. But other than that, that's quite impressive from Jordan Gill. Sean McGoldrick moved to 7-0, a win against Dylan McDonough, who was undefeated in 3. His record now 3-1. It was an 8-round points win for Sean McGoldrick. Let's jump to the main event here. Joe Cordina, he put his WBA International Lightweight title on the line. He also was fighting for the vacant Commonwealth Lightweight title against the former holder of the belt, Ayaz, Sean Mashadod, 15-3 with 1 draw. Now it's 15-4 with 1 draw. A unanimous decision in favour of Joe Cordina, who's now 8-0. A promising prospect, but a fight here where he certainly had to think to get the win, Ayaz.
Oh yes, what a win for Joe Cordina. I mean, Joe Cordina boxed very, very good. Well done to Joe Cordina. He boxed very good. His jab, his range of move. I think he's going to be a world champion in the future. But at the moment, it's just a learning game for him. So I think he just needs a couple of more. I think he needs a couple of more fights before he gets to that level. I think he needs to go British level, European level. Then I'll go for a world level.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The kid's got a bright future, but one step at a time. I think he knows that himself. You could tell from the post-fight interview. I've actually left the most shocking fight of the night till last here. Natasha Jonas, 6-0. She fought for I think it was actually her belt. Yeah, it was the WBA International Female Super Featherweight title. She took on Vivian Obernauf, who we've seen here twice before. Her record 12-4. One loss, of course, came to Katie Taylor over 6 rounds on points, and the other loss came... Well, the losses in the UK I'm talking about, out of the 4, 2 of them happened over here. The other loss came to Chantel Cameron, in which she retired on her store after 6 rounds. I think it was an 8 or 10 rounder. So yeah, this was Natasha Jonas's turn to get a win over Obernauf, and we were going to get the measuring stick out and see how it compared to Chantel Cameron and Katie Taylor's wins, but it went horribly wrong for Natasha Jonas. She was down twice in the 3rd round and once in the 4th round. In the end, Joe Gallagher was made to throw the towel in. A TKO there in the 4th round for Vivian Obernauf, who doesn't speak a word of English, but she's managed to grab a bunch of fans with, I guess, her body shape and her pretty face. A lot of people were liking that. What I will say is they were translating what Obernauf said, and she seemed like a real nice lady. I know that she took advantage of, I think it was 14-1 or 16-1, and she put some money on herself to win, so credit to her. But an unbelievable upset there, Ayaz. Obviously, they're talking about Natasha Jonas just being 1 fight away from a world title fight. Not anymore.
Yes, you're right about that. But Joe Gallagher's stable is not looking very, very good at the moment. I can tell you that for a fact. Recently, we saw Liam Smith lost. We saw Natasha Jonas lost. There's Callum Smith fighting George Groves. That's a very tough fight, which I think, in my opinion, Callum Smith is going to lose that fight. But it's boxing is a winning game at the moment. You lose, obviously you win back. I think obviously Natasha Jonas. I think from this fight, I think what's going to happen, I think personally, she's going to have a couple of more fights and I think she'll go again. But I mean, hopefully she'll come back for the future and hopefully we'll see her with hopefully we'll see that Katie Taylor fight in the future.
It's not looking a brilliant thing right now for Miss GB. Natasha Jonas, her against Katie Taylor. It's not on my Christmas list for sure. Yeah, and watch what you're saying about Joe Gallagher, Ayaz. We will be speaking to Callum Smith later on in the show. But the fight itself here, Obernauf. She came out in the first round. She hit Natasha way too often straight away. Natasha was walking back in straight lines. I think that they picked up on that on the commentary. Obernauf certainly won that first round. It was a closer round in the second round, but I'd probably edge it to Obernauf again. You know, she certainly came to fight. She was putting lots and lots of pressure on Jonas, really bringing the fight to her. And in the third, obviously, Jonas got caught with a long right hand. And, you know, it really did travel some distance. And she got back up, and she did so well to get back up. But then she got knocked down again by another barrage of shots. A 10-7 round, so a massive, massive round in favour of Obernauf. I couldn't actually believe that Jonas got back up from that second knockdown either. Credit to her, you know, she didn't show any quit at all. That is one thing that you certainly need in boxing. When times go hard, you know, if you've got some quitting you, it usually comes out, but she didn't have any quit in her. She was too brave for her own good. In the fourth round, obviously, Jonas got dropped again by a right hand, and then a little bit later in the round, with about 15 seconds to go, bear in mind these are 2-minute rounds, Jonas walked into a few shots, and arguably, in my opinion anyway, the ropes actually held her up from going down for the second time in that round. So yeah, it could have been called a knockdown in my opinion, but the referee was really thinking about jumping in at that point anyway, so it didn't really matter too much. But Joe Gallagher, like I say, threw the towel in and stopped it. But yeah, it seems like levels have been shown here, and she seems to not quite be on Chantel Cameron or Katie Taylor's level here. But yeah, leaving Wales alone and moving out now to the main events card, actually, in New Jersey, USA, at the Mark G. Attess Arena, I believe it's called, in the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino. What do we have here? On the undercard, we had Dennis Duglin, a friend of the show, 20-6. He was in there against Vaughan Alexander, 12-0, a former prisoner, actually. I think he did about 10 years. He's the brother of Devon Alexander, who strangely was fighting on the exact same night last Saturday, but in completely different places. I'm not quite sure if they get along. I could be wrong. But yeah, Vaughan Alexander was 12-0, undefeated, and Dennis Duglin said on this show if he loses, he's retiring. Well, he doesn't need to retire because it was a unanimous decision in favour of Dennis Duglin. He practically shut out Vaughan Alexander. Very, very pleased for Dennis Duglin. His record now 21-6. Dimitri Bivol, he moved to 14-0. He successfully defended his WBA World Light Heavyweight title against Isaac Chilemba, who's now 25-6 with 2 draws. You predicted a Bivol knockout. So did the listeners, and I went with Bivol on points, so I was so happy about this one. It's weird because on the prediction league, we all went with Kovalev by knockout, which I was quite certain of. Obviously, we're going to get onto that in a moment, but we know how that one went. And then we, of course, all went with Alexander to win on points. We're going to get onto that in a moment as well. And I'm just going to say that both of those predictions from us all completely went wrong. And the only one that we disagreed on was Bivol to win on points. I went with, and Bivol by knockout, yourself and the listeners, which didn't happen. So 1 point gained, and it was my point. So I'm happy about that. I'm trying to catch up. Dimitri Bivol, though, let's talk about this fight here just a second, Ayaz. Did you happen to see it at all? I know that they didn't show it. I actually had to find a stream. Did you see it?
No, unfortunately, I didn't see the fight.
Yeah, they're making it hard for us to see these fights. They truly are. But yeah, just a quick rundown here. Obviously, Dimitri Bivol, you know, his punch variety was absolutely brilliant on Saturday night. Sneaky uppercuts up close. Chilemba's always a real tough customer. I knew that. That's why I said points. Chilemba was, you know, he was popping out the jab nicely, actually, to the point where he managed to mark up Bivol's eye as early as the 4th round. He showed a real brilliant jab, actually, Chilemba. But yeah, Bivol for me, you know, he's just improving all the time. Roy Jones Jr. was actually in the corner with Chilemba. It wasn't the most captivating fight I've watched, I've got to be honest. Bivol dominated pretty much every round, so you can't ask for much more. Chilemba, like I say, it's very hard to stop him. And Chilemba can be quite a spoiler at times. He can be very negative, as we saw against Kovalev. You know, he knows how to stick in there. But in this fight, he wasn't actually negative. He gave it his all. He came to Bivol, which you'd have imagined would have probably suited Bivol's style and possibly presented the opportunity for a knockout. But it didn't look like it was going to happen at any point. And it was a good technical fight. It was a good learning fight for Bivol. It was good to get the rounds in, but it wasn't really the most impressive win I've seen. And like I say, I was the only one to predict a Bivol points win, so I was really happy with that. It's interesting to see the final punch stats actually. Bivol obviously threw more shots, but he threw something like, I think it was 450 punches in 36 minutes, and he landed 150. Chilemba landed 75 shots. That's 225 punches landed in total between both guys, which is roughly one punch landed every 10 seconds of the 36 minutes that the fight went. So a little bit of maths there, but it, you know, to just land one punch every 10 seconds doesn't really sound like an action-packed fight, because it wasn't. That's it for that one. Like I say, Dimitri Bivol now 14-0, certainly looking, you know, like a few big fights going to be happening for him in the near future, but it was set up to be him and Sergey Kovalev later this year, perhaps around December time. Well, that has been derailed by Alida Alvarez. Sergey Kovalev, though, he went into the bout with a record of 32-2 with one draw. He got KO'd in 7 rounds by Alida Alvarez, the previously undefeated Canadian fighter by way of Colombia, I believe. Still undefeated. He has a record now of 24-0. It was for the IBA and WBO World Light Heavyweight titles. Kovalev was down 3 times in that 7th round. But the fight itself, the first round I thought was quite close. It was difficult to score. I think that Kovalev probably landed the better shots, but Alvarez's speed meant he was able to outland Kovalev a little bit, I felt. So probably an Alvarez round. Only jabs were really being thrown, though. It wasn't any big right hands or anything at that point. In the second round, Alvarez landed 2 nice right hands in the second round. The speed, again, was very key. He landed a good 1-2 combination and then a singular right hand. It was definitely an Alvarez round there. I actually gave the third round to Kovalev. He was starting to cut the ring off really well. He was getting closer to the target. Alvarez wasn't keeping Kovalev at bay as often as he did in the first 2 rounds, so Kovalev was getting closer. And Kovalev repeatedly was going to Alvarez's body with the right and left hooks. I found that quite interesting. In the 4th round, Kovalev had a great round. Big success with all of his shots, body, head, left hooks, right hooks, jabs, power punches. Alvarez took some really, really good shots. He looked in trouble, actually. His legs dipped at one point, and Kovalev was getting even closer at this point. Alvarez showed his toughness, but nobody can keep taking that many shots, you'd believe. Kovalev landed 25 power punches in that 4th round, which is unbelievable that his opponent, whoever he was still on his feet. I mean, not many statues could take 25 shots from Kovalev in 3 minutes and still be standing up. I mean, compare that to the Bivol fight, by the way, the final punch stats there, you know. Alvarez did showcase a brilliant jab, and when he does pop it out, Kovalev wasn't enjoying it. Kovalev was showing good head movement, though, you know, hitting and not being hit in that 4th round. In the 5th round, though, the pace slowed a little bit from round 4. No real telling punches were landed. Kovalev, I'd say, probably edged that round. I think that was where he was starting to take over in terms of on the scorecards. In the 6th round, once again, Kovalev, in my opinion, won that round. Kovalev seemed to make Alvarez's legs dip when he landed a short right hook on the inside. Kovalev, when he was letting his hands go, was very, very accurate. Now, in the 7th and final round, boy oh boy, Alvarez, he actually fell short with a jab and stepped in with a big overhand right that dropped Kovalev. It was a temple shot. Kovalev, when he got back up, you know, he got hurt by a jab straight away. Then he got hit with a big left hook and a right hand, and he was down for the 2nd time there. Now, the 3rd and final knockdown came when Alvarez once again landed a big right hand around the back of Kovalev's guard, followed by a left uppercut and then a right hand for good measure on the side of the head as Kovalev was going down. Wow, I mean, you know, now I know why Adonis Stevenson was paying this guy step-aside money to not have him as a mandatory for about 2 years, or 3 years even. Obviously, Adonis Stevenson didn't want no part of him, and we've just seen why. He's a real player in that light heavyweight division. What I will say, a lot of criticism online actually after this, saying that Kovalev is no good, Andre Ward ruined him, all this rubbish. He was winning the fight, for God's sake. He got caught by a peach of a shot and he didn't recover. He got dropped 3 times and he still showed the character to try and keep on going. He's not finished by any stretch of anyone's imagination. Anthony Yarde was sat ringside for this one. He was going to be eyeing up Kovalev because he's now number 1 in the WBO. And I tell you what, I'm sure he's very happy. I think he'll much prefer the Alvarez fight. I'm pretty sure he would, because Kovalev has got that absolute killing power, quite literally, even though I don't like to say that. He's an absolute killer. And Alvarez, I don't think, does have that power, but obviously he's a brilliant boxer and he's got a great chin. So him against Anthony Yarde, I'm certainly up for that one. One thing I would like to say is that I think Bellew Jack against Alvarez would be a great fight. I tweeted that afterwards. Bellew Jack actually retweeted it. I think he fancies that as well. Literally 20 minutes after the fight had ended, though, Kovalev started a live Periscope, and I was thinking, like, what the hell is going on here, kind of thing. And I jumped on it to have a little look, and it was very sad. He was in the back of an ambulance on his way to the hospital with the sirens on, and he was actually apologising to the fans for letting them down. I felt that it was a little taste to some people that don't know what it's like, for the real harsh reality of boxing sometimes. He was on his own, lonely in the back of that ambulance, and if he would have won, he would have been surrounded by all of his entourage, and the circumstances would have been completely different. They would have been jumping around all happy and stuff like that, and then, if you lose, you're in the back of the ambulance with no one by your side. Quite harsh there, but all the very best to the Crusher. We wish him a speedy recovery. Alvarez, like I say, not really a big puncher, but he certainly knows how to finish a man when he's got him hurt. Brilliant fights down the line for him, Ayaz, but Kovalev can certainly come again. I know that age is, it's a factor now. He's been in a few hard fights now, but he's not done. I just don't care. He's not done for me. What do you think about the whole thing?
I don't think Kovalev's done. I think personally, the weight's too tight for him at the moment. I think he should just move up weight now.
Okay, interesting. I mean, imagine him at cruiserweight. Imagine him and, well, I don't know if he'd end up fighting Gassiev, but him against some of the guys there. That could be interesting, actually, Ayaz. I like your thinking. Moving over now to the Nassau Coliseum, the final bill to mention of the reviewing. This is a fight card that I haven't seen, so I'm just going to fly through the results here. It happened, obviously, in New York, USA. We had Gary Antoine Russell. You've guessed it, he's the brother of Gary Russell Jr. He moved to 7-0. It was a TKO in the first round against Jose Esquivel, who's now 10-8. Brandon Figueroa, the brother of Omar, he moved to 16-0. A TKO in the very first round against Luis Cruz, who was actually undefeated himself, 13-0. No longer undefeated, my friend. Richard Comey, he got another win here, a KO in the second round against Yardley Cruz, who's now 24-11. Richard Comey, I think it was a couple years ago now, he had like the most unluckiest year of all. Both of his losses came back to back, I believe, and they were both split decisions in his opponent's backyards. He's had to, really come up the hard way. Richard Comey, a Ghanaian fighter, very, very big puncher. 27-2 now, another knockout for him. Marcus Brown moved to 22-0. Obviously, Marcus Brown has really, been really, really impressing everybody since he's turned pro. And I'd like to see him stepped up, to be honest. And he's looked pretty much flawless, really. Well, he took on a guy here called Lenin Castillo, and Brown himself found himself on the canvas in round 5, but he did get up to win a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. So Marcus Brown, a little bit of a gut check there, but he's come for it. 22-0 now, him. Sergei Lipinets, former world champion, moved to 14 wins. He's got 1 loss. It was actually a majority decision win against Eric Bone, who's 20-5. I haven't seen the fight, so if you have seen it, please let us know what you thought. Was Sergei Lipinets very lucky to get that majority decision win or not? I mean, it'd be interesting because Lipinets, I'd say, is a much better fighter than the likes of Eric Bone. Peter Quillin returned to the ring. I know that he'd had a fight, I think, late last year, but aside from that, I think he'd had a couple of rounds fighting in about 2 years. Obviously, he hasn't been on the big stage since being knocked out in the first round against Danny Jacobs. He got win number 34. He's got 1 loss and 1 draw. It was a unanimous decision, very, very wide against Leon Love. Very sad about that. Leon Love, at times in that fight, I saw a couple of clips, and Peter Quillin was really mugging him off, actually, making him look very stupid in there. Leon Love's a quality person, actually. Not just a good boxer, but a great man. Really kind guy. I'm sure, if you've listened to this podcast when he's been on, he's a real generous character. His record now 24-2 with 1 draw. Louis Collazo got a win, actually. Win number 38. He's got 7 losses. It was a majority decision over 10 rounds against Brian Perella, who's a little bit of a prospect, so that's quite an upset, I believe, there. Perella now 15-2. But the main event, Devon Alexander 27-4 with 1 draw. He took on Andre Berto 31-5. Berto was down in the 3rd round, a little bit of a dodgy knockdown. It looked like Alexander actually hit Berto a couple times in the back of the head, which led to the knockdown, but it ended up being a split decision in favour of Andre Berto, so a little bit of an upset, actually. We all went with Devon Alexander to win on points. The general consensus online in terms of social media and stuff like that, they all say that Devon Alexander should have won the fight, and it's 2 dodgy decisions in a row now, and believe it or not, those 2 dodgy decisions came to Andre Berto and Victor Ortiz, 2 men that have fought each other a bunch of times, so very unlucky there for Devon Alexander. I'm not quite sure where he goes from here. Very, very tough place he's found himself in, but all the very best to him, and also Andre Berto, maybe one last crack at something big for Andre Berto there. But that's really it for the reviewing. I've tried to fly through that as quick as possible. Just before we wrap up part 1, there's one last thing to do. That, of course, is to welcome our very first guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated super middleweight star. It's, of course, Mr. Callum Smith. Callum, welcome back on the show, my friend.
It's our pleasure, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, my friend. How about you?
Yeah, all good.
Top man. So, Callum, we last spoke in July of last year. It's been quite a while. At that time, you just picked to fight Eric Skoglund. You went on to beat him quite handily at the Echo Arena. After that fight, it was supposed to be Jürgen Bremer, of course. You were preparing for a southpaw for the whole of camp, and then with 4 days to go, out steps Bremer, in steps the relatively unknown Nicky Holzken. You had to travel to Germany for the fight. You went the distance with him. You won very wide. But how frustrating was that, for everything to really change with just a couple of days to adjust?
It was very frustrating, to be totally honest with you. And it sounds daft because, in my opinion, I was given an easier fight, but I liked the Bremer fight, and I'd say I'd done a full camp with southpaw sparring, and I feel I was getting better each bar, and I feel we had a good game plan, and I think a win over Bremer would have been a good win, and would have beat every other win I'd had previously. So I felt like I was going there to make a statement and finally get a bit of credit for one of my wins, which I don't feel I've had so far in my career. Every win I've had, everyone's just always say, oh, you were supposed to win and supposed to win well and stuff. So for that to get took away and then get given Holzken, who was unknown, and people had basically, I was getting asked for tickets for Miri Grove before I'd even beat Holzken. Everyone thought it was just an easy early night, and it was frustrating, but the aim for me was to just win and secure my place in the final and get the world title shot against George Groves, and I feel that's what I did.
And like I say, I've said it before, I feel like you do need a big name in the other corner to really get up for it. And, a big change like that with a couple of days to go and with so much significance on the line there, like you say, for the final spot. Now, one criticism that I've seen online, which I'm sure you've seen too, is that a lot of people say you've not been so impressive in this tournament thus far. Now, my argument would be that you fought 2 guys that were both unknown quantities, really. You've beaten both wide. You're also the only man in this tournament that's had to fight 2 undefeated fighters in a row. Another thing, obviously, like I say, is that you can sometimes, I believe, Callum, fight down to your opponent's level at times. Is this criticism from the fans fair? Am I right in what I've said? How do you assess it?
A bit of both, really. I hold my hands up. I haven't performed the way I'd have liked and the way I know I can in my previous 2 fights, but I also haven't had to. Like I say, I've won relatively comfortable both fights and haven't really had to overexert myself or perform to the best of my ability. Will those 2 performances be enough against Groves? Probably not. I will need to be better, and I feel I know that, and I train a lot better when there's a bit of fear, and I know I'm in for a tough fight, and I always feel I perform better when the stakes are higher. So I have no worries about the final. I know I'll turn up and I know I'll perform the way I know I can, and if I believe I do, then I believe it's good enough to beat George Groves. But yeah, I think if you look at my quarter-final, semi-final, and George's quarter-final, semi-final, then he's the man in form at the minute. But when the two of us step in the ring, I believe form goes out the window, and it's all about who performs on that one night.
Yeah, very well said. Now, after the Groves and Eubank Jr. fight, obviously Groves had that shoulder injury. It was a little bit of a spanner in the works. There was a big interim period where no one was quite sure what was going to happen. We'd heard rumours of other fighters replacing George. We'd heard a variety of rumoured locations for the fight to take place in. Was that a difficult period for you to stay, focused?
Yeah, but I said the delay wasn't the problem for me. It was more just the opponents. When it was rumours it wasn't going to be George and it was going to be a replacement of anyone or Eubank or anything like that. That was frustration because it took away the world title for me, and that's what has been the main reason for this tournament, to win it and become a world champion. And without George, then there's no world title. So that was the more frustrating part. So when I realised it was not going to be George in the other corner, the actual date, what didn't really matter. So I had to wait 1 month, 2 months or 6 months, as long as I got that fight. I feel like the last 2 years of my career have been chasing the world title fight, and for that to get took away from me again, that was the frustrating part. But glad that we've got it all sorted, and it's me v George, which is the fight that I want. But I feel it's the fight that the public wanted to see as well. I think it's the proper final, so fingers crossed all goes ahead.
And my next question was going to be, now that the fight has finally been confirmed, are you happy that it is in fact George Groves, a worthy finalist in the other corner? You've kind of answered that question there. The crazy thing is, Callum, obviously we've got two Brits here, both fighting each other in Saudi Arabia. The fight takes place on the 28th of September, Friday. Were you shocked when you heard that it was going to happen there? And also, how do you feel about the fight being out there?
I say I was shocked, but obviously I heard rumours here and there that there was a chance it was going to be there. So when it was officially announced, I wasn't really too shocked. But if you'd have told me before the whole tournament that I'd fight George Groves in Saudi Arabia, I'd have thought it was mad. You always think of the big domestic fights in the MEN, the O2 or Arena or whatever, and big atmosphere, and it looks like we're not really going to get that. But it's one of them. I don't want to sound like I'm slagging the tournament, because the tournament's been fantastic for me personally, and I think for boxing it's put across the two weight divisions, it's made a lot of great fights and champions fighting each other, and that doesn't really happen enough in boxing these days. So it has been great, but the idea of me and George fighting Saudi Arabia is a little bit disappointing for the fans. But for me personally, it's a level playing field. George is travelling the same as me. He'll have to adjust the exact same as me, and he'll have the same atmosphere as me if it's not as good as what it should be. So we'll all both have to adapt. So it is a level playing field, and the aim for me is still to just go there and do a job the same as I would if it was over in England and I'll become a world champion. But I understand it's probably frustrating for the fans, but that decision was took out to mine and George's hands the second we signed up for the tournament last year.
Yeah, of course. I did see an article, I didn't actually click on it, but the headline said, I think it was a quote from George Groves saying that he has got the what's the word I'm looking for? The advantage that the fight's happening in Saudi Arabia. I didn't read any more about it, but I thought that was quite bizarre. Who would you say, Callum, has had the easier route to the final? Obviously, George fought Eubank Jr. That was a great fight. He was much bigger than Jamie Cox, let's be honest, who was relatively untested. Both of those fights were both on British soil. You've had to, go on the road with the last-minute opponent changed, and then Eric Skoglund at the Echo. Both undefeated fighters, like I say. Yeah,
it's how you look at it. I think from you look at the two, then he's had that tougher draw to the final, which fair enough. But I think if you look at it, was Eubank better than Holskin? Yeah, he was. But was Skoglund better than Cox? I believe he was. So I believe I had the tougher quarter-final. He had the tougher semi-final, and if Skoglund was easier than Cox, then I think he would have picked himself, but he never. So it's one of them. I think we both had a tougher one in each round, but I'm not arguing that his semi-final was tougher than mine with the last-minute replacement. But again, I think it all means nothing. I think it's all about the final. We've both got here whatever way we have done, and it's a good fight, and I think it's the right final. I think it's the final that most people predicted. Well, I predicted myself personally. I believe George would come through that side of the draw, and I said he was the champion going into it, so he's the man I'd like to beat for his belt. But 90% of people believe he had the tougher run, and yeah, he probably did, but I also feel he's put a lot more miles on his clock than I have as well throughout his career.
Yeah, very true, very true. Now, you're both boxers. You also both have knockout power. The one obvious advantage for you is your size. You're an excellent body puncher as well. George Groves can crack to the body also. We saw that against Jamie Cox. Yeah. It should be a brilliant fight. I'm expecting it to probably be the most exciting fight of the tournament, Callum. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think stylistically it should make for a good fight. You say he's got his strength, he's got his weaknesses, and he'll say the exact same about me. We both can punch a bit, and say we both have healthy head and body and stuff. And I think the style should gel pretty well. And I'm looking forward to expecting a tough night and expecting an exciting fight. And I'll have a good camp, and I'm enjoying training. It's the camp that I've always waited for a world title fight, which I haven't had just yet. So I'm enjoying training, and I'm enjoying studying George and coming up with ways to beat him. And to say I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to it. And it should be a good fight, but it's a fight that I've always liked. The George Groves fight. It's been talked about a couple of times previous in our career when it didn't materialise, and it probably worked out for the best because now we're fighting for the biggest belt in boxing, the Ring magazine. So maybe it's a blessing that it didn't happen previously, and now the stakes are a lot higher.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I want to ask you, Callum, do you believe you have to be at your absolute best to win this fight? Obviously, some fighters go into fights believing that if they're 70% or 80%, it will still be good enough to beat their opponent. Do you believe you need to be 100% and no less?
Yeah, because I've got to expect the best version of George Groves, and I think the best version of me beats the best version of George Groves. I'll be underperformed, then I may be able to underperform and win, but I can't go into this fight expecting that. It's the biggest fight I'm fighting of the number one in the world at the moment. So yeah, I've got to expect I need to get my best to win, and that's my mentality all through training camp. I need to perform, I need to be better than what I had previously, and I've always said that higher the stakes and that bit of fear where there's a chance I'll lose, it'll always bring out the best in me, and I think this fight will be no different.
And obviously you started this tournament as the favourite to go on and win the whole thing. You now find yourself the underdog against George here. You haven't done anything wrong, but I'm guessing, like you said, the performances that Groves has put in, I guess, have elevated his chances in the bookmakers' eyes of winning the whole thing. Yeah. Does that bother you at all? Do you like to be an underdog? Where does that lie with you?
No, as I said, it doesn't bother me at all. And even at times in my career where I've been a massive favourite in fights where I probably shouldn't have been, I've never read too much into it. The only pressure I ever put on myself is just from myself and my own standards and my own expectations. But I always felt that whoever won the Groves Eubank fight would start favourite over me anyway, just for that win. If Eubank had beat George Groves, then I think he'd start the favourite over me. So it was kind of always what I expected. But in my eyes, I'm the favourite to win it. In George's eyes, he's probably the favourite to win it. It's the bookies is just another man's opinion. And I said that at the start of the tournament when I was put favourite. It was nice, it's flattering to be favourite when there was world champion in the tournament, but it's just someone's opinion, and as I still have to go and prove them right, and hopefully I can prove them right from the very start of the tournament that I was the favourite to win it, and I am the best man in the tournament, which I do fully believe.
Coming down to the last couple now, Callum, in other news, your former foe Rocky Fielding has managed to win a world title by stopping Tyrone Zoiga on the road the other week. I'm sure you're happy for him to have been stopped by you in the first round and to now become a world champion in such a short space of time. Yeah,
it was a good win for him. I think after the loss to me, a lot of people wrote him off, and then he didn't really perform in the brass fight or the Ryder fight, but he stuck at it, and regardless of whether people say it's the second world title or not, to go to Germany and beat Tyrone Zoiga in the way that he did is a good win, regardless of what title's on the line. So you've got to give him credit for that, and I think it's put him in the mix for some potential fights with some of the bigger names in the division and domestically. So fair play to him.
Yeah. And very unlucky was Beefy the other week against Jaime Munguia. A brilliant performance from Liam. Some people have actually said that he exposed Munguia a little bit, but credit to Liam, such a brilliant effort. And, he proved once again he can give anyone a real gritty and hard night's work.
Yeah, I think I was proud of him on the night. I think it was a very good fight from a neutral to watch. I think stylistically they both gelled, and it was kind of what we predicted beforehand. And I think Liam asked a lot of questions in Munguia, and I think he ticked a lot of them, and it also, as I say, not exposed him, but I think it showed that he's still a little bit green in certain areas, and he's not ready for your likes of Canelos and stuff, which they were saying beforehand. But he's a good fighter. He's only younger. I think he's only going to get better and better. But I say we were proud of Liam's performance. I didn't think he did much wrong. I thought he boxed very well. I think the size beat him over the 12 rounds, which happened at the very highest level. But I'm sure he can come again. And like you said, I think he's proved he can compete with anyone at the highest level.
Yeah, all the best to Beefy. And also, since we last spoke, James DeGale lost his world title, won it back, and then vacated it. What's your thoughts on that whole situation?
I don't know. It was a bit of a strange one, giving a world title up when if he'd have announced a huge fight in the coming weeks after it, then he's kind of, I think, well, fair enough. That was a bigger fight, but he hasn't quite done that. I've seen he's linked with fighting Rocky Fields and now possibly at the end of the year for his regular title. And if that's the case, then you stand to question, why did you give up the IBF world title? I don't know. I've seen a lot of people saying it was to avoid his mandatory, who's now full champion. He's a good fighter, but I don't know. James has showed over the years that he'll fight anyone. So again, I think only James knows the full reason. But I think his reason was he wants to make the big fights. But I think the big fights are easier to make when you've got a world title. So it's a strange one, but we'll have to see what's down the line for him, whether it's a good move or not.
And finally, I know that you're not a brash human being. I know that you like to do your talking in the ring, Callum, but I know that you believe 100% in yourself to win this fight. So I'm going to put it like this. Do you see yourself winning this fight on points, or do you see the fight ending before 36 minutes of action in Saudi Arabia?
I think it ends before 36, if being totally honest. I think we're both big punchers, and I just think he's shown his vulnerabilities over the years, and I think if I perform the way I know I can, then I think my power should be enough to trouble him. And no, I'm not going in there looking for a knockout. I believe I can beat him out on points, but I just think his vulnerabilities in the past, I think I can knock him out, definitely. I've got to believe that. I've got to go into this fight believing I can win anyway, and I genuinely do believe that.
Yeah, excellent. And just before I let you go, Callum, is there anything that I've left out at all, or anything that I haven't asked you? I can't think of anything.
No, spot on. All good.
Excellent.
Nice speaking to you again.
Well, like I say, Callum, as always, it's my pleasure to have you on the show. I'd like to wish you the absolute best of luck in Saudi Arabia on the 28th of September. And God willing, next time we speak, I'll be speaking to the new WBA Super-Middleweight champion.
Yeah, that's the plan. Thank you, mate. Speak to you soon.
Top man, Callum. God bless.
Bye, mate. Bye-bye.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. We're going to start, of course, with the news part. Ayaz, take it away. What do you have for us?
Eddie Hearn has just announced a show in Chicago. There will be a fight which will be happening between Jesse Vargas and Thomas Delorme.
Yeah, a real intriguing fight, actually. Again, I don't think this card is... Well, it's okay. I mean, obviously, the top of the bill, Daniel Roman and Gavin McDonnell, or I should probably say Artur Beterbiev and Callum Johnson. But yeah, it's a decent undercard fight, actually. I see it as a little bit of a 50-50 fight. I think that Thomas Delorme is a real good boxer, and he was in a brilliant fight last time out against Yordenis Ugas. It was just a case of his chin just didn't hold up. Jesse Vargas, obviously not a humongous puncher, but seems like he's hitting hard enough, actually, lately. It's an intriguing fight. I mean, obviously, Delorme, I'd probably say, has got the... Well, I was going to say he's got the better names on his resume, but when you take into account Jesse Vargas last time out against Adrian Broner, that was a real close fight there, which obviously ended in a draw. So it's a tough one to pick here, but it's a good fight. And Thomas Delorme, again, for those that don't know, he's only lost at the highest level. He lost to Crawford, obviously, but it's like his chin has sometimes kind of let him down, actually, and that's what's ended up, being the case. Now, last time out against Yordenis Ugas, it was a brilliant fight, and I think there was some controversy attached to it. I can't remember what happened now, but it was a good fight. And he was down a few times, actually. Both fighters were down a few times. So, good fight, actually. I like that one. Could be very fun. I'm sure it will. Yeah, good fight there, Ayaz. Thanks for that one. What else?
Thomas Adamak will face Big Baby Jarrah Miller.
Yeah, some people kind of heard about the rumours of this fight possibly taking place before it got announced earlier this week. Not very happy with this one, to be honest. Jarrell Miller 21-0 with one draw. Thomas Adamek 53-5. Obviously 41 years of age now, 6'1.5". He's not a natural heavyweight. He's up here simply because I don't think he trains as often as he used to. It's just going to be an easy win. I don't really see the point in it. He's coming off a win himself, Adamek, against Joey Abel, but then again, that I don't think that's too much there. He did beat Fred Cassie, a former opponent of Hughie Fury. That was in November of last year. But yeah, I mean, he lost obviously most recently to Eric Molina, a bit of a shock loss actually, but Molina knocked him out in the 10th round. He also lost to Artur Spilka, he also lost to Glazkov, he lost once upon a time to Vitaly Klitschko. He was a good fighter in his day, but I feel like now he's not a real good heavyweight, and obviously he's seen much better days. But yeah, I'm expecting a pretty easy win there, not too over the moon with that one, to be honest.
Top Rank have signed Saul Rodriguez.
Yes, this is a real good signing actually, because Sal Rodriguez obviously signed with Floyd Mayweather for quite a while. I think he was really happy when he got signed there, but then he was so inactive that he ended up being not too pleased about the whole thing. He was really fighting like once a year and stuff like that. I think he only fought once in 2016, once in 2017. He's been out the ring for about a year and a half now, and he's a bright, promising prospect, 21-0 with one draw. And, he's a kid, really, which was kind of building a lot of momentum at one point, and then he's kind of just completely fizzled out. Some people completely forgetting who he was, or who he is, I should say. But he's still young. I mean, he's still young enough, obviously. I think he's 25, maybe 24, something like that. Still young. So, yeah, very good that he's signed with Top Rank, and hopefully they'll get him fighting more active, and hopefully we can see how good he really is when he steps up.
Luke Campbell will face Yuvan Mendy on the undercard of Anthony Joshua vs Povetkin.
The rematch that we've all been really calling for quite a while. Luke Campbell, his first loss obviously came to Yuvan Mendy, a real shock loss at the time. Yuvan Mendy's shown us that he's a decent fighter. He wasn't to be overlooked at that time when they did have the first fight. And Luke Campbell really has gone on, and he's had a couple of rocky moments since then, but when he took on Linares, he really showed some character. And this is a rematch that we thought may not happen. It may not happen, but then the WBC kind of forced them to end up having it, and it's finally been announced. It's been a while in the making, I believe, but yeah, it's finally been announced. It's going to be on this show here, and Luke Campbell gets a chance to avenge that loss, which I know that he'll be desperate to try and do there. A great fight, a really good fight. Really looking forward to this, and the winner of that fight actually ends up being the mandatory for Mikey Garcia's WBC title at lightweight. So brilliant stuff there. Yuvan Mendy 40 wins, 4 losses and 1 draw. Luke Campbell 18-2. All the very best to Luke. I wish him the best in that one for sure.
And finally, Lucas Matisse has retired from boxing.
Yeah, very good boxer in his day, Lucas Matisse. I just want to quickly fly through his record just to give me 2 minutes here and talk about this guy. I don't want to do him a disservice. He was always one of my favourite fighters to watch. He always brought excitement. He retires with a record of 39-5. Of his 39 wins, 36 were by knockout. It is a fantastic thing that he did end up winning a world title before he hung his gloves up. He didn't look himself at all when he took on Pacquiao. To be honest, since he lost to Victor Postel, he's come back and he didn't really look himself, to be honest. I mean, he knocked out Emmanuel Taylor, he knocked out Tewa Kiram, who had a real padded record. We talk about Michele De Rocco earlier on. Boy oh boy, this was right up there. 38-0 Tewa Kiram. He was winning that fight as well until he got knocked out by a weird punch from Matisse. But yeah, last time out against Pacquiao when Matisse was down in rounds 3, 5 and 7, he just didn't seem himself, and it's a shame to go out like that, but it would have been a big money fight. Obviously we know that he had to travel there to Malaysia, and he's had a long old career. He's been in a lot of hard fights, but when you look back, and I want to look back particularly to the time where he just looked like he was brilliant. I mean, You know, his first loss came to Zab Judah, a very, very controversial split decision loss. He knocked Judah down. Then he lost a very, very controversial split decision to Devon Alexander. He had him down as well in the 4th round there. And then obviously put together a brilliant string of wins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 knockouts in a row, till he took on Lamont Peterson. This one was in 2013 in May. And Lamont Peterson, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was an IBF world champion at the time of the fight, but for whatever reason they did some kind of catch weight and the belt wasn't on the line, and this would have been his chance to become a proper world champion, and he knocked Peterson out in 3 rounds, but because the belt wasn't on the line, he didn't become world champion. He absolutely obliterated Lamont Peterson there. And then obviously he took on Danny Garcia. I remember that fight there. Danny Garcia, you know, he won a lot of fans that night because he was brilliant that night. And then he took on John Molina Jr., and that was one of the best fights of the year by a million miles. That was an absolute dogfight, you know. And then he took on Ruslan Provodnikov, and like I say, he's just given us so many unbelievable nights. And for every single second of every single fight, right up until the end, he had that one punch that could just end the fight at any point. It didn't really matter what was going on in the fight, if he was getting outboxed, anything like that. If he landed that right hand at any point, it could just end like that. He could put people's lights out with one punch. But like I say, towards the end, he did certainly slow down. I'm glad he definitely won a full world title there before he retired. And we will miss him. We really will. It's a shame. He got 39 wins. It would have been nice to see him get 40. But it is what it is. We're all fans here of the Machina, Mr. Lucas Matisse. All the very best to you, my friend, in retirement. It's a shame to see him and Maidana both leave the sport. 2 Argentinian absolute fire-fisted bangers. But yeah, all the very best to him. And let's talk about the previewing now. Not too much to go over here at all. There's been no predictions because there's not too many fights to talk about, really. Not many of note. Not really any big fights going on. But let's just scrape the barrel a little bit here and make it interesting. One fight to mention at the Belasco Theatre in Los Angeles, California, USA. A prospect called Hector Tanahara. You've probably heard me say that name 100 times. His record 14-0. He's in an 8-rounder against Emmanuel Morales, who's 7-2. Someone said a couple weeks back, why do you keep mentioning Hector Tanahara? You know, he came on the show once upon a time. It was ages ago, and you know he's still undefeated. But you know, no one knows about him. No one knows about him. Why do you keep mentioning him? And I had to say, because once you've come on this show once, just one time, that makes you a member of the family for life, a member of the BoxHard family for life. So we will always talk about your fights. Any prospects out there listening, you know what to do. Get on the phone. We will have you over here. Moving over now to Finland, one fight to mention over here. The heavyweight Robert Helenius, he gets in against Yuri Bikatsu, who has a record of 10-16 with 3 draws. Robert Helenius, 26-2. A man that I do not enjoy watching fight at all, but we must mention it. One crazy fight that's happening at the Celebrity Theatre in Phoenix, Arizona, USA. BJ Flores, 34-3 with 1 draw, takes on Trevor Bryan, who's 19-0. Both men are ranked highly in the WBA, and it's so bizarre because, you know, let's be completely honest, BJ Flores is not one of the best heavyweights in the world. Trevor Bryan, you're probably asking who's that. He's 19-0 with 13 knockouts. He's 28 years of age. His best win on his record is probably, I'm just looking at it now, it's probably Derek Rossi. That fight happened in 2015. It was a unanimous decision over 10 rounds. That's probably his best win when he became the NABF junior heavyweight champion. It was like an NABF junior title, so not even the full NABF title. He won that, and that's his best win, and he takes on BJ Flores. And believe it or not, the winner of this fights the winner of Fred Oquendo and Manuel Charr. So the winner of Manuel Charr and Fred Oquendo fights the winner of Trevor Bryan and BJ Flores, and whoever wins that becomes the WBA regular heavyweight world champion. Go figure. Crazy stuff, the WBA. And finally, I think this is the final bill to mention. No, 2 more bills to mention. This one's at the Avalon in Hollywood, California, USA. One fight to mention over here. Jesus Rojas, 26-1 with 2 draws, takes on Joseph Diaz, 26-1. It only seemed like a couple weeks back that Joseph Diaz took on Gary Russell Jr. for the WBC title. This one's for the WBA regular title here. Joseph Diaz, a huge favourite in the betting shop, and I'm sure that he'll probably do the business here. I'm sure he probably learnt a few life lessons in that fight against Gary Russell Jr. And hopefully, if he's improved, he will beat Jesus Rojas, who's not a bad fighter himself. His one loss came early on. He was back in 2008, so almost 10 years ago now. But yeah, he's got a couple of draws, like I say, against guys who probably aren't as good as Joseph Diaz. So a good fight here, and his chance, Joseph Diaz, to become a world champion. That's a 12-rounder, of course. And the final bill to mention, just one fight to mention actually on this bill, another man who's been on the show, I think it's twice now actually, so certainly a member of the BoxHard family. It's happening at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. Eric Hunter, 21-4. We had him on the show, I believe it was last week, former opponent of Lee Selby. He hasn't fought since losing to Lee Selby on the 9th of April 2016. He returns to the ring. He was supposed to be taking on a guy who was the brother of, what's that guy's name, Ayaz, that knocked out Amir Khan once upon a time, the Colombian guy when Amir Khan was undefeated?
Bradis Prescott.
Bradis Prescott, yeah. This is actually a fight where his brother, Dawlis Prescott, was supposed to be taking on Eric Hunter, but for whatever reason, Dawlis Prescott, I think, fought on the weekend just gone, so obviously he's not fighting him. And in steps a guy who also isn't a bad fighter, but it's probably not as much as a risk to Eric Hunter. But Eric Hunter said he wants the big fights. It's a 6-rounder, and he takes on a guy called Fatiou Fassinou, who's 28-10. I want to just have a look. Well, he's coming off of 4 losses in a row. One was to Brandon Figueroa. That's probably the standout name, really. Yeah, so I'd expect Eric Hunter, if he's got anything left, to win pretty handily. Maybe even stop Fatiou Fassinou. All the very best there to Eric Hunter, a friend of the show, 21-4, hopefully 22-4 this time next week. But that's really it for the preview, and we've tried to go through things as quick as possible. We brought you the first guest. We brought you part 1 with the review in. We've just done the preview in. Ayaz did his job and brought you the latest boxing news. The last thing to do before we wrap up the show, of course, is to welcome our second and final guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former Central Area, former British, former WBO, Intercontinental, EBU, European and WBC silver champion. It's, of course, Mr. Gavin McDonnell. Gavin, welcome back on the show, my friend.
Good man. Thanks for having me.
It's always my pleasure, Gav. It truly is. So we last spoke not too long ago, actually. It was the last week of May. At that time, you were preparing for the Stuart Hall fight. On paper, that fight was pretty much, I mean, I don't want to say 50-50, but it was certainly a 60-40 kind of fight. In the ring, it was anything but that. A very dominating performance from you there, Gavin, against a teak-tough former world champion in Stuart Hall.
Yeah. The fight went how I expected it to go, you know what I mean? But yeah, Stewie's he's had a great career and he's a good name to have on my record, you know what I mean? And it come at a good time, you know what I mean? We've got a little bit of momentum this year, a couple of big fights, exactly what I needed, knowing that we're potentially going to get a world title shot. They're the fights I needed, you know what I mean? And I'm right where I want to be now. Yeah,
for sure. Like I say, a real, tough guy in Stewie Hall. I know that you wanted to try and make a statement, try and stop him, but, he'd never been stopped, obviously, in his losses. And, best of luck to him in retirement. But moving on to what's next for you, though, Gav, obviously, it's going to be October the 6th in the States. You'll be challenging for the WBA World Super-Bantamweight title. I know that you've been on the road, obviously, with Jamie a good few times, but this will be your first time fighting abroad as a professional. How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, in all fairness, it's just second nature now because I've been on that many trips away with our kid, and I've always been training or in camp. Do you know what I mean? I've never been away and not been in training. So to me, it's just like just another day at the office. Do you know what I mean? We've seen it all, been all over the world, and only difference this time is I've got to get in the ring and fight. Do you know what I mean? Because the emotion I share with our kid and his fights means as much to him as it does to me. So I know what it feels like emotionally, do you know what I mean, to go away, get the wins, also get the loss now, do you know what I mean? And now it's my time, do you know what I mean? And this is what I wanted, do you know what I mean? I want to be tested. I wanted to go abroad and fight, and I'm just lucky enough that it's happening in the States. And it's everyone's dream, do you know what I mean, to have big fights here and also in the States, and this is my time now.
And this is, I'm going to try to not make this question confusing, but I think I might even confuse myself as I'm saying it. Even though this is an Eddie Hearn card, obviously he's been your promoter for many years now. Daniel Roman, the champion, you'll be fighting him. He's just signed with Eddie. So I guess really you kind of are the away fighter in terms that you've got to travel, but you're not fighting on a rival promoter's show. Do you feel like an away fighter here or not so much?
It's win-win for Eddie. Like, he's got both fighters. To me, I don't care. I mean, I want a world title fight, and I don't care where it is, who it's against. I mean, to me, it feels like I'm an away fighter only because I've got to travel to fight. You know what I mean? But I suppose he is as well. But he's probably a little bit closer, probably to home than me. And that there ring's a ring. Can be from wherever, do you know what I mean? And anybody can win a fight, and I'm just glad that I've got it, do you know what I mean? And it's in States, and Chicago's supposed to be a nice place. Not LA what we wanted, but nevertheless, a nice place to go to.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I know that at the moment you're training out in Dubai. I know that you posted something the other day about as soon as you walk outside the hotel, you've got a sweat on already. What's the weather like out there? You loving it?
I won't say loving it. I mean, I'm a sun god myself, but the humidity is just, you know what I mean? You just walk out in it and you just start sweating. I'm here just for a week, you know what I mean? I'm here on business. I'm not training. Literally, I ain't got time to really stop and do all. Do you know what I mean? I'm training 2-3 times a day most days. I ain't got time to do all, do you know what I mean? So I train, have an hour or two's rest, get my bag ready to go again. Quick week, Monday to Friday, and I'm back. It's one of them, do you know what I mean? Quick shoot over Dubai, smash a week's training in. So me and Dave, we're getting that quality one-on-one work, and I get back Saturday and back into swinging things in UK, do you know what I mean? And really start knuckling down and start my sparring.
Well, I do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. What do you know about Roman, Gavin? Obviously, his 2 losses both came by decision. They were both to fighters who, to be completely honest, were not that great. But then that was a long time ago now. He's certainly come on leaps and bounds since then. Yeah,
he's on a bit of a roll. He had a couple of defeats earlier on. I think he's on 15-plus fight win streak at the minute. He's obviously better than he looks. When you watch him, you think, do you know what I mean? He can beat him comfortably. But then I suppose everyone else who he's fought has probably fought the same. And out of his last 5 fights, I think they've only lost 1 between them. Like, a lot of them unbeaten. He's obviously better than he looks. Do you know what I mean? A lot say the same about me. I look easy to beat, and then when you get in there, I'm a lot harder than what you think. So it's one of them. I think the fight will be good, do you know what I mean? And I won't underestimate him in slightest, do you know what I mean? He's obviously better than he looks, do you know what I mean? And he's world champion for a reason. And I think he's Mexican as well, so obviously they can fight. I'm just looking forward to it, do you know what I mean? This is the fight I want. This is the fight I wanted for this WBA. I mean, Ray Vargas for WBC. He's got a win over me, but I think it would have took a while to get to mandatory and pull that one off. So I'm just thankful that Eddie's pulled this out of the bag, and this is the one I wanted, and I'm more than confident that I'll beat him.
Yeah, me too. Now, I want to ask you, have you seen much tape of this guy, or is that very much Dave Coldwell's job?
Dave watches him more than me. Do you know what I mean? I've watched a few of his fights. I sort of know how to beat him. I've just got to work to my game plan of what to do and make sure I'm focused, you know what I mean, and switched on come fight night. And the belief's there. I know 1,000,000% I'll beat him. But yeah, it's one of them, do you know what I mean, that I've got these next 8 weeks, I think, put my life and soul into my training, do everything as I'm told, and then we fly over there and pull out a big win.
Now, coming down to the last couple questions, your gym mate Tony Bellew was crazy when he called out Makabu. He was completely loopy when he called out David Haye. He was completely off the rails when he wanted the rematch against an injury-free David Haye. Now he wants Alexander Usyk. I've stopped writing Tony Bellew off a long time ago. Never bet against him. No one can say what he can't do. He's proved everybody wrong time and time again. Is this another crazy decision from Tony? Should this fight happen, in your opinion, Gav?
It's not crazy, no. Only because Tony has the power to knock any man on planet out, any man, any weight. And if he lands one, do you know what I mean? It's game over. So it's not crazy, no. It's not like somebody like me who if you have to knock somebody out, do you know what I mean? I ain't got that one punch power, but Tony has. So whoever's got that power, you're in any fight. You could lose 11 rounds and 2 minutes, best part of the full fight, and then land your punch, and then you win the fight. You know what I mean? Or one punch changes the fight, and he's got that power. You know what I mean? And I genuinely believe if the fight gets made, Tony will pull it out of the bag, and just put the icing onto a great career what he's had, and especially the last couple of years where I've known him well. Do you know what I mean? I've had some great nights, and I hope he does get the fight, and I genuinely believe he'll do a job.
Yeah, that really would be something. Like I say, you mentioned there about the power. Those 3 fights I brought up, David Haye ×2 and Makabu, I forgot to mention they won all of them by knockout, so you're right about the power.
Yeah.
What's the latest on your brother Jamie? How's he getting on? Do we know which weight he'll be returning back at the moment?
I think there's talk featherweight. Do you know what I mean? He's had a couple of weeks off. I mean, I don't think he's took it too hard. Do you know what I mean? He hasn't took it badly. He's just had a few weeks out of the gym. I know he was ticking over last week, just while we've been this week while we've been away. And when we get back, do you know what I mean? On that Monday, I'm sure he starts serious training, and we're starting to look for a date, maybe 10, 12 weeks time before Christmas. Do you know what I mean? It's one of them. He's going to show his true colours now, and you know what I mean, what a champion he is. He's been over years, and this is where you see what a champion's made of. That he can come back and get another shot at a world title and even win one. Do you know what I mean? He's got the talent, just needs the belief now. I think a win, it'll just set him up nicely.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And finally, Gavin, is there anything else that I've missed out at all, or perhaps forgot to ask you anything at all?
Not really, no. Do you know what I mean? I just thank all the fans. Do you know what I mean? I've had great support, and it's nice to have everybody backing me. Do you know what I mean? You get odd one or two who doubt you, but don't we all? I'm just glad that I've got a lot of support, and I 1,000,000% bring a world title back to the UK, and hopefully along with Callum Johnson too. Hopefully we'll have a good night over there, and UK will have a couple of new world champions.
God willing, my friend, God willing. But listen, Gavin, thank you once again for coming on the show. It's been my pleasure, as always, having you on. And like I say, October the 6th, God willing, you'll be the new WBA Super-Bantamweight champion of the world next time we got you on the show.
Yep, you will have. You know what I mean? That intro can change slightly. You know what I mean? To the new champ.
There
you
go.
can add the WBA Super Champ to that.
We will.
Yeah, look forward to speaking to you soon, mate.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 147 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A massive thank you to our 2 guests on this week's show, Gavin McDonnell and Callum Smith. 2 boxing families, 2 boxing men, and potentially 2 new British world champions when they both challenge for world titles just 1 week apart. All the very best to Gavin in America and, of course, Callum in Jeddah. The biggest thanks of all goes out to you, the listeners. The prediction league currently stands at myself finally on 50 points. Ayaz and the listeners, though, both tied at 53. It's a race to 100, by the way. Remember, if you do get a chance to please leave us a review on iTunes, it will be greatly appreciated. But more importantly, I'd like to wish you all a fantastic weekend, and we hope to see you all again next week.